welcome to my March recap. In March, I read 16 books. The first book I read in March was an arc. Thank you Nimbus Publishing for this arc via NetGalley. This book followed our main character who is in a queer relationship as she is struggling with identity, herself, the relationship, how to handle things. It's about a toxic relationship and how isolating, how scary it is to be in one. And then about the willpower that you need to get out of one. When I was reading this, at first I was a little bored, kind of dragged on. I wasn't fully immersed into the story right from the get-go, but towards the last like 60% of this book, I didn't want to put the book down. I read it basically in one entire sitting, and at the end I was almost crying. And not a lot of books moved me to tears. It was just a great buildup of tension and emotion and everything that you want to see in a book. I rated it 5 out of 5 stars. I would recommend this book, especially if you like character-driven books, queer relationships, women love women books, and a good book on like relationships with friends and family and emotional relationships as well. So as you know from my last book haul of 2025 video, I got a very easy death, and I was gonna save this as my last book to be read from the pile of books that I bought that I hadn't read, but it was actually the first book I picked up out of the haven't read portion, and I also rated this a 5 out of 5. This is a intimate memoir that recounts the last few weeks of Simone's mother's life. It talks a lot about grief, death, life, aging, and how complicated things get when one of your parents is dying. I rated this a 5 out of 5 because of the pure emotion that this book was giving, how intense it was without being intense. It completely gutted me. It left me feeling so uncomfortable for fear of when my parents pass away, but comforted to know that I will be able to return to these words and read them again and know that I'm not alone in what I'm feeling. I would recommend this book to you, especially if you like memoirs about grief, if you like books about grief, if you want something short but not sweet, and if you're just trying to read all of Simone's writings. I think this one is very good and personable. I read Beware of Pity. This book is set before World War II, and it follows our main character Anton as he gets into this weird sort of one-sided relationship with a paralyzed girl. As the story goes on, it explores all the different types of pity, guilt, class, shame. It's really 3 stories told in one story. It was very interesting to read, but was kind of weird because at certain points while I was reading, the book seemed to drag on and I would find myself very bored and things were said over and over again. It felt a little repetitive, but other times I read through 50 to 100 pages super fast. So besides the weird rhythm of the book, I really enjoyed what I was reading and the underlying themes, as well as the actual story. And I would recommend this to you. I don't know if I would start, if I was trying to read all of Stefan's works, if I would start with this book, but I would recommend this to you, especially if you're looking for more of a psychological book and less of a thriller or plot-driven book. Something Rotten. So this book is about a husband and a wife and a baby, and the husband had a job, but he got fired from his job because of something inappropriate that happened, and they decide to take a break and go overseas to the wife's family's house just to spend a little time there. While we're there, the husband meets some of the wife's friends and becomes particularly close to one of the males. And what else is going on is that one of the other friends is dealing with a diagnosis from the doctor that is terminal. There's quite a lot of things going on in this book, but the author did a really good job at combining all of them together in the story to make it interesting without being overwhelming. I liked the more thinky piece sections of this book that talked about masculinity, gender roles, parental responsibility, family. There is a good plot twist in this book. Unfortunately, I guessed it very early on, but there was enough misleading that I was second guessing myself on my guess the entire time, which kept me intrigued and wanting to keep reading the book. I rated this a 4 out of 5. Yes, I'd recommend this, especially if you're looking for a plot-driven book that lightly touches on a lot of heavy topics and also is kind of a funny story to read. In the Cafe of Lost Youth. This is set in the 1950s in Paris, and it's mostly following the characters that go in and out of this one cafe. It's got 3 different narrators, so it's split into kind of 3 different short stories that are all based around one person. This book was really good to me for the vibes that it had, the atmosphere that this author was able to create and build, and not so much the characters or the plot that was in the book, but moreover just about the energy that I got from what I was reading. And I feel like books that have good atmosphere are really hard to create and to come by. It's very dreamy French literature with the perfect little vibe of mystery. But I did feel like the book ended too quickly. I was really hoping for more, but I still enjoyed it. Rated it a 4 out of 5. And yes, I would recommend this book, especially if you're looking for a sort of fragmented story about loneliness and identity happening. Now, I think this author is definitely going to become one of my favorite authors. The way that Annie is just able to write so simply about life and different scenarios and situations that happen, but be able to capture and convey such strong emotions in that simple writing is truly impressive to me. She's very quickly becoming one of my favorite authors and someone that I am searching for all of her books online and on Libby and hoping to get all of them and be able to read them. But Happening, this is a very short but important read, and it is a sort of brutal memoir or retelling of the time that Annie got an abortion. And it was an illegal abortion in the, I believe, the 60s in France. It talks a lot about, you know, personal political preferences and just how important women's healthcare is in past, present, and future. I rated this a 4 out of 5. The simpleness of the writing, but the emotion that is being portrayed is still there, so the entire time the book felt deeply personal and full of emotion, but also at times there was this a little bit of detachment from Annie, and I could probably imagine that that was how she was actually feeling at the time when she was dealing with the situation. Would I recommend this book? Yes. Yes, if you're interested in how things were politically in the 60s and how they are pretty much the same now. Yes, if you're interested in memoirs about guilt, grief, longing, loss, and womanhood. And yes, if you're interested in the sort of political aspect that this book offers. Just Kids by Patti Smith. And I know I'm super late to this game because years ago people were screaming all over TikTok and Instagram, read Patti Smith, read Patti Smith. And honestly, I expected the worst. I expected it to be like all the other books that I read that were extremely hyped on TikTok and Instagram where I didn't like it. So I put it off. Did I like the book? Yes. I rated it a 4 out of 5. This is a memoir about Patti Smith's early years before she became popular, and also about her relationship with a famous photographer, Robert. The entire memoir is about art, music, love, being yourself, struggling to become who you are and to find your identity and your place in the world. I really liked the beginning and the end the most. The middle was okay, it was still really good, the writing was still good, but I did feel like that area dragged more than the beginning and end. and I didn't realize how connected Patti Smith was to the music scene until I read this book. Would I recommend this book? Yes, especially if you're a creative person or if you like memoirs around the music scene, the art scene, and New York back in the old days. Ordinary Human Failings. I love Megan Nolan and I was really excited to read this book. I didn't fully understand what the book was about until I finished the book. I didn't really read the synopsis, I just kind of went in blindly, which I think was my fault for setting this idea of what the book was and then the book not matching my expectations. So I did rate this book only a 4 out of 5, but it's about a crime that happens and a reporter who goes to get information from the family of the person who commits the crime to try to figure out what is happening and break the news first. The book is a little less thriller. There is a mystery in the plot, but the book is not so much focused on that mystery, and it's more so focused on all of the characters in the story and a sort of think piece on humans and how every human kind of experiences failings throughout their life growing up. Either you are the person doing the failings or you are the person experiencing the failings, but either way the book was more so a think piece than the mystery thriller that I thought I was getting. I still really enjoyed it. Would I recommend it? Yes. Not if you're looking for a thriller, murder mystery, a crime book. Yes, if you're looking for a literary novel that is disguised as a thriller. Swimming in the Dark. This is a reread. I read this book a very long time ago, so I wanted to pick it up again and kind of refresh this book in my mind. It is a gay coming-of-age story about two guys who fall in love in a Poland summer camp, and the world around them doesn't really accept that, so there's a lot of secrecy and politics and the question of identity. On my reread, I didn't enjoy as much as I did the first time. I rated this book a 3 out of 5. I think the ending was beautiful and emotional, but I feel like the book was too short and I didn't really connect with any of the characters. There wasn't enough building of the characters that I could sympathize and empathize with them during the entire book. I think that if the book was a little bit longer, I would have liked it a little bit better. Would I recommend this book? Yes, if gay coming-of-age books are your thing, yes. But maybe I wouldn't recommend it as a reread. The Door. So this book, I believe, is a fictionalized memoir. That's how it reads. It's a retelling of a writer and her very unpredictable housekeeper. And that's pretty much it of the whole entire book. I really wanted to love this. It comes very highly recommended by a lot of people, but there was something that just kept me from connecting with the book, with agreeing with the book, with liking the book, with liking the writing in the book. I don't care that the characters were unlikable. That's typically one of my favorite styles of books, is where the characters are a little bit unlikable, but in here I just struggled so hard to care to keep reading. I did finish the book, but it was like I was fighting myself to finish it. I think the concept was really neat and interesting and is a good idea, but the writing was very long-winded and the pacing of the book just really dragged on. Would I recommend this book? No. Unless you like slow, dragging literary pieces. M-Train. Yeah, I read Patti Smith's Just Kids, and then I said, what else has she written that I would maybe like? And then I saw M-Train. So I said, okay, I'll read this. I'll give it a shot. I liked her other memoir. This one I didn't love as much as Just Kids. Just Kids I rated 4 out of 5. M-Train I rated a 3 out of 5. It's really a collection of thoughts from Patti Smith's later life. A lot of traveling, drinking coffee, dreams, remembering her husband. It reminded me of the living autobiographies of Deborah Levy, but it lacked the more emotional depth that I was hoping to receive from this book. There was some good sentences, but I just was missing the emotional connection I didn't really care so much for the dreams and the random thoughts and lists and details about 14 different cups of coffee. So I rated it a 3 out of 5. Would I recommend this book? Yes, if you want to read all of Patti Smith's writing. No, if you are happy with the books you have read of Patti Smith. No, if you want something similar to Just Kids. Yes, if you like memoirs that are really just about life and not deep. A Spy in the House of Love by Anais. This follows Sabina, who is a married woman, as she gets into different relationships with other men that are not her husband. This kind of double life of lies and secrecy. There is a strange character who is the lie detector who follows Sabina around, and I wish that we got more from that character in this book, but I think that the writing was very interesting overall, and it was good enough that it made me want to read some of her other stuff like Henry and June and Fire and Incest by her. Would I recommend this book? Interestingly enough, probably not, unless you already know the premise and you want more of that. I rated it a 3.5 out of 5 just because there was some potential with the characters, but I found myself a little bored at times, and compared with Little Birds and Delta of Venus, it is less erotica, but not strong enough musings on human life. It doesn't quite meet you in the middle that would make me satisfied enough to recommend the book. Bitter Water Opera. This is a really short book that is written in a kind of fragmented way that kind of blends reality and fiction or hallucinations, kind of exploring what it means to feel disoriented in your own life. Personally, I did not enjoy this book. It reminded me a lot of Woo Woo by Ella Baxter in the sort of hallucination, not really sure what's real and fake kind of part of the book, but it had more for me to relate with than Woo Woo did, which is why I rated it a 3 out of 5. That said, the book is still pretty abstract and kind of has a floaty energy to it. Would I recommend the book? No, unless you know for a fact that you like experimental prose and books where you really have to do the work to kind of get what the author is saying. Which brings me to my next book, It Lasts Forever and Then It's Over, which is also a very experimental, floaty prose book. The main character wakes up and it is a zombie apocalypse, and the book is kind of a think piece on grief, memory, and what it means to be alive. I didn't love it. Again, I rated it a 3 out of 5. I liked the concept of a zombie apocalypse as loss, but the paradoxical writing and the poetic but too poeticness of the book really wore me down and made me not enjoy what I was reading. Would I recommend it? No. I don't think I would recommend this to anybody unless you really were looking for a book about grief that was experimental and very abstract. The Price of Salt. This is a slow burn queer romance between two women who kind of accidentally ended up together. One was a cashier basically in a retail store, and the other one is going through a divorce with her husband, and they end up in this weird sort of middle space between friendship and relationship. I rated this a 3.5 out of 5 because there were times when I was reading this book where I was just straight up bored and I didn't really care for what was going on, and I felt like everything was being dragged out. But I did enjoy the writing that was taking on more of the identity and judgment and what it means to be a queer person and worry about society and how they see you. Would I recommend this book? If you're into a quiet queer classic, yes. If you're looking for more of a modern queer book, no. It's kind of middle ground because when I think about the point that the writing gets across, I enjoyed it, but when I think about the true story and plot, I did not enjoy it. And the last book that I read in March, Didion and Babitz. So this book is a comparative essay slash biography slash trash talk between Didion and Babitz. I think what the author was trying to do was show you how these two authors represent two different sides of literary history, but it didn't really work. It was very biased, and yes, the author did start the book saying that she was going to be biased, but I don't understand the point of putting Didion's name on here when you're not going to give her the same amount of credit and time that you did for Eve. The author made this almost slander towards Joan Didion, and the entire book is really just about every single man that they slept with and less about the work that they put in to become the literary names that they are now. I did enjoy learning about life in LA then and semi of New York at the time. I loved learning the little bit of background we got on Joan and the lot of background we got on Eve, even if most of it was just about their previous sexual encounters. But again, the book felt biased and mean-spirited. Nothing that the author said in the book made up for that. Would I recommend the book? No. In my opinion, read Joan's work or read Eve's work, but you can skip out on this book. I don't think it's worth it. So that was all 16 books that I read in March. Some good, some bad, a lot of memoirs, and some speculative fiction that I didn't really enjoy. If you've read any of these, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them and if you agree or disagree with my rating. And if you found a new favorite book in March, drop that in the comments because I love adding books to my TBR. Bye!